Well, let's now look at the key policy responses to unemployment and employment policy. So when we think of the responses provided to unemployment, we are really looking at different ways of thinking or key debates into how we understand unemployment and the ways we might end up addressing it as governments or policy practitioners. Two logics or two core arguments often inform the ways government often responds to unemployment. One of these is the supply side arguments, or the arguments which looks at the individualistic characteristics and behaviors of workers, assuming that it is individuals' responsibilities often leading to, unemployment, and we shall speak to this in a minute in detail. And also the demand side argument, which mostly looks at the structural dynamics which might be preventing people from getting the jobs. So these two different understandings really inform various ways of understanding unemployment and might inform specific measures or specific policy responses government might adopt in responding to unemployment. So the supply side perspective is really just looking at the individual responsibility mostly, suggesting that people can't get jobs because they are maybe not competitive enough on the job market, or maybe because they are not doing enough effort to get the jobs and participate in the market, in the labor market. And the solutions which derive from this understanding are often focused on microeconomic reforms, which are aimed at reducing structural rigidities and increasing the skills of potential workers so that they get the jobs. Things which might be encouraged when this understanding is prioritized might include, encouraging people to, you know, to be more actively looking for work, or even trying to make people make more efforts into educational and training opportunities so that they become, better supplies to the demands of the labor market. And many other measures like those might be adopted. And again, here, the understanding is just mostly focusing on individualizing the problem of unemployment as an individual's responsibility rather than a structural failure. Then there is the demand side argument, which is mostly recognizing the structural dynamics often leading to unemployment, and more emphasis is placed on the demand side of the economy rather than the worker or the individual. So this is kind of looking at individuals and how probably the systems in place or the structures in place are not working for the individuals to get their head around the job market as structure or the national economy broadly, which is supposed to be providing or to be creating more jobs for people. So this argument is skeptical regarding the ability of market forces to generate full employment. And there is this understanding that when people are not getting jobs, it is rather the market failure or just the structures in place not creating more jobs rather than individuals not making efforts to find the jobs they need. So this also argues that strong economic growth and avoidance of recession might be crucial in addressing unemployment as an issue. But also it argues that the government can play a role in stimulating economic growth via its decisions about taxation and spending. So in a sense, the demand side argument is putting the responsibility on the structures, and this might suggest the specific policy responses which are informed by this logic in trying to respond to unemployment. So in terms of implications, really, when we are thinking of policy responses to unemployment, specific questions might be addressed or might arise. Questions such as, is unemployment perceived as a result of a failure of the economy to create sufficient jobs to meet the demands of work? Or the understanding that is unemployment a result of the failure of the individuals to find, their to make their own efforts to get jobs. So, and these two logics again definitely can lead to specific solutions or specific policy positions to addressing in unemployment. So in a sense, this is kind of setting up a value-based debate that's central to policy design. And the key debate is often around, should unemployment be addressed through neoliberal supply-side policies? That is, the policies which focus on the individual responsibility, and policy including reforms that seek to make individuals ready for jobs with that understanding that it's individuals' responsibilities or individuals' failure to find jobs rather than the structures in place. And that's often drawing on a neoliberal kind of thinking. Or should it be something which follows the Keynesian way of doing things, inspired by John Maynard Keynes' theory, which focuses on structural economic issues and understanding that unemployment is mostly a structural problem rather than an individual failure. So all these technically are, again, core value positions, and specific values really informing the debate on how we get to address unemployment as a social policy issue. Now, even when doing that, there are still competing demands and interests as we try to address unemployment as a social policy challenge. So there are demands and interests which really reflect the fact that unemployment policy isn't just about getting people into jobs. It's all about also, the natures of work, and even the conditions under which we want people to be working. And there can be a whole debate on that specific aspect itself, beyond even the issue of whether the jobs are accessible to people or not. And this debate might include other things such as who participates in the labor market, what kind of jobs are available to them, and how the labor market is supplying or is obeying to the logic of supply and demand. And again, there can be competing interests into these two considerations, or the supply and the demand. So it's never just a straightforward debate on how we address unemployment, or just it shouldn't be assumed that by the end we just need to make jobs available to people without questioning what kind of jobs, under which circumstances, what characteristics of the work, who gets to be prioritized. And this starts really leading us to the core debate of unemployment, again, as a social justice issue, which we shall be discussing about in the next recording.